community, the shop local is a very important part, but we want to take it a little bit bigger and sort of to the invest local and the support local and the really help the smaller businesses succeed in their communities, because they're the ones that help the communities that they're involved in and they're located in. So it's pretty key.
Very much. Having sat on the board of our local soccer club for kind of 6 years now, and evolved a little bit in my son's hockey club, we really see, outside of, say, Timbits, right? Everybody knows the Timbits program across the country. Most of the support for amateur sport comes from local businesses. It doesn't come from IBM or Sobeys or the big conglomerates. It really does come from small stores like the World of Soccer and Hockey Life, and not from the huge chains. So it does reflect in the community, right? That's the.
And that's the thing is, being able to support those, I think, is really important. So I'm going to ask you, Neil, what was the moment or situation that made you realize there was a significant gap in the market for small and mid-sized sporting goods retailers?
Well, it was sort of a combination of two things. Working with Ski Cellar, we got involved in a company that had a relatively sophisticated inventory management system, but it was quite old and it really couldn't communicate with the outside world in terms of keeping a website current or keeping the Google searches updated and whatnot. It really was sort of a system that spoke Latin when the rest of the world had moved on to other languages. And then we combined that with trying to get financing for a business that was fundamentally inventory based. Retail stores don't typically sell to other businesses. So they don't have a B2B component, and they don't have receivables from established companies. They ideally are selling for cash, or typically customers are using debit or credit to pay. So there's not a lot of assets that support financing in the conventional methods. And when you go looking for this sort of financing, you really run into two problems. First of all, the company has to have a system in place to properly track their inventory, or the lenders just aren't prepared to finance. And secondly, you actually have to be in loan sizes that are typically outside the requirements of a small business. A Home Depot that needs tens of millions of dollars of financing and has tens of millions of dollars of inventory has access to capital that a smaller company that needs a few $100,000 of inventory and a few $100,000 of financing just simply doesn't have. And we pretty quickly realized that there was a certain need that wasn't being fulfilled, and it was really driven home when we were talking to one of the big established chartered banks, and we were basically told we were too big for their small business program and too small for their institutional financing program. So it was clear that there was a gap that needed to be filled, and that's where we started working on Sportsman Logistics.
Yeah, it seems daft that that the banks aren't set up for this, but great that you found the opportunity. So, David, how did you approach designing your offering to meet the unique needs of these retailers?
Well, first, if I can just make a comment on what Neil said, the most ridiculous letter I've ever seen in my life was one he showed me from the bank saying, "Sorry, your revenues are too high. Money on that project." Never in my life would I have expected to see something like that. So in terms of designing the solution, it really, the primary thing at the forefront of my mind and Neil's was simplicity. I think the hardest thing to engineer is a simple solution. And talking with colleagues of mine that own soccer stores and some billiard stores and others, everybody struggled with the complexity of putting a system in place to track inventory and provide the banks what they need to finance. And they're all pulling their hair out. And some of those solutions can run to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a year. And small businesses really don't have the capacity. There's a lot you can do with that money other than put it into a management system. So we wanted to build something that was light, that was easy for people to use. It really just allowed them to send us information of what inventory they had, and then for us to lend money against that. Even so, the business solution for how we can lend and finance small inventory buys and kind of niche buys, whether it be some novel hockey sticks that Neil's ordered that should be in today. At least he promised me. I want to take a look at it. And my son wants to try them out. And niche ski clothes, the pickleball, even though ironically Adidas is one of the biggest companies in the world, pickleball, very small, right? So we're looking at it like a small business. So being able to just keep things like that simple, get rackets into clubs and into consumers' hands easily was the focus of it. So simplicity. My engineering staff used to talk about elegance. To them, elegance was the simplest solution that met the needs, and that's what we tried to focus on for this.
But what I'm hearing is also, keeping it simple, but actually giving all the capabilities that the big box stores benefit from today.
Absolutely, that's great. Yep.
So, since implementing the system with Ski Cellar Snowboard, Neil, what feedback have you received?
Well, from the staff, the system. I mean, there's a learning curve with any system, but the end result was that we could do more with less people, and we could do more with less time. So it freed up your staff's ability to do other things that are, equally as important as managing the inventory. So that was probably the biggest feedback we got internally was that it was an easy system to implement, and it freed up the time to do other things because the manual component of the old system had been drastically reduced. I think on the customer side, the feedback we got was sort of two things. One, they were happy that we were now able to enter the modern era and actually have a website that showed real inventory, live time, what locations it was at. But the second feedback was equally as important, and it was the lack of feedback. And what I mean by that is the fact that customers weren't complaining about the quality of the data and the accuracy of the website and whatnot. It really meant that the system was working. Because nobody calls you up and says, "Hey, congratulations, your website's working," but they do communicate with you when there's glitches. So I think from the lack of feedback from the customers, I think was actually positive, because it meant the system was working seamlessly and as it should, sort of behind the scenes. So that was pretty exciting.
That's good. Now, we're talking a lot about the inventory, which, I know is part of it, but really you're a finance company. And, I know, so since we launched the campaign, you have identified other markets as well. David, do you want to speak to that and sort of the synergy with the rest of your business?
Sure. We always expected there'd be a niche with manufacturers as well. And I think that we were caught off guard a little bit, or at least I was, at how big a demand there is from small custom manufacturers to help get their products into the market. So we've had companies reach out to us, as I was saying earlier, making niche hockey sticks that are half the price of a $300 or $400 stick, to ski jacket manufacturers, to the pickleball guys reached out to us to try to get the product into the market, and multiple ski companies out of the U.S. as well. So I think there seems to be a much bigger market than we expected to help local and small manufacturers get their products out there. And I think those are items we see at least a lot of our retail customers wanting. Novel product. I don't know if I can say it. Ski goggles that have Canadian artists' designs on them. Just
cool,
neat products to get out there in the market that people are looking for help with. Sometimes they get financing or bank. Most times they can't. Anything that helps them get that inventory into a retailer is big. So, we even actually had one manufacturer ask us to use our logistics sort of backbone to do their distribution for them. Right, they'll store their product right with us, which kind of adds a whole nother component of security to our investments too, if we're actually sitting on inventory in our hands physically. So a lot of need there, and I think we're finding that we're able to kind of match manufacturers with retailers as well as financing, sort of both ends of it. We even found a company, a company out of Cornell University found us to say, hey, we're trying to put this sort of web platform together to kind of merge local manufacturers with local retailers. And the fact that we were kind of building an entity to help finance that, we found the synergy were perfect, right? So at the end of the day, we don't care if it's our technology or somebody else's that we're using. The goal is to get local product from local manufacturers into retailers. So,
and what I'm hearing then is that the issue is really access to capital and cash flow, and that's the problem you're solving, and you're tracking it through your inventory management, and you're giving people the tools to compete with, whether it be large scale manufacturers or large scale retailers.
Yeah, exactly. And an analogy, maybe, and hopefully this isn't lost on everybody, analogy from my previous life. We did a lot of a very custom telephony work. So we could build a automated phone system for a company, and literally sometimes in hours, that would take a major telephone company months to do. And the difference was they're so process heavy because they need to be, because they have 10 million customers they're serving. They have to do everything according to a really stringent process that's expensive. It takes a lot of time and is very cumbersome. Whereas we could go out there and we could deploy a solution in days and have it up and running with zero risk to anybody, and meet needs. And the financing world needs a very similar sort of thing, right? You don't need the bank process that requires 2 or 3 VPs across the country to sign off on something. What you need is that's local, the way banking used to be, right? You go into your local branch, your bank manager, oh yeah, this makes a lot of sense. We can help you out. So kind of a return to that again, that simplicity of getting things done.
So Neil, can you speak to the milestones you've achieved so far this year?
Well, there's obviously been a couple. The first was what I called the beta test that the system and the whole concept got from Ski Cellar. It was a unique opportunity to sort of develop and create something inside a working retail environment and address the actual needs of a particular retailer that reflected ultimately the needs of a bigger market. So that was sort of the first key. We aren't coming to investors now saying, hey, we're thinking of developing something, we're thinking of testing something. That work is done.
Yeah.
The second thing is the actual creation of the company and the launch of the equity crowdfunding, to go through the due diligence with Equivesto and to be able to be in a position to actually start financing and allow the local investor to invest local dollars in the local community. It's a different approach than if you approach accredited investors or if you approach institutions. It allows the local people to support their local economy. We have had a number of suppliers now sign up. We've got a hockey stick company that we're working with, and as Dave says, they're sending some product to us this week for us to demo and test out. We've got Ski Cellar on board, obviously, and they were on board from day one. We've got a local ski company, Paradise Skis, that makes manufactures ski and snowboard. So they're now on board with our platform or with our program. And then the sort of the biggest name recognition, brand name recognition, is the Adidas pickleball and paddle products. So it's a growing market with a brand that is very well known internationally, but they're only now establishing themselves in the racket sports. So it was a unique opportunity for us to get involved, and now we have the distribution abilities for the province of Alberta, so Calgary, Edmonton, and surrounding communities. So those are sort of the key milestones we've accomplished so far.
Great. Anything else you want to add to that, David?
No, I think Neil covered it mostly. There's a couple of other clothing manufacturers we're hoping to bring online. They're ready to go for kind of next season. Second ski manufacturer. So more than we expected this quickly, which is good.
Yeah, because I know your objectives were quite sort of modest in the first year. So, you've certainly seemed to have excelled in that area. So, I think probably that as everybody on the call is here to invest, we should talk turkey. And David, can you explain how you make money and how investors could make money?
Absolutely. So, unlike kind of past projects, the goal wasn't to build a explosive tech company or oil and gas company that you're going to go from $1,000 investment to a $20,000 investment, or to zero. Right? It wasn't kind of the boom or bust concept. It was really, as I was getting older, and I won't say how old, and looking at kind of what my colleagues and compatriots are doing, people are really shifting to more of a cash flow investment, right? It's not so much about building a fortune hit or miss as it is to say deploying money in it and generating a pretty healthy return. That we want it to be more along the lines of what Sportsman Logistics is doing, right? So people put in, say, $10,000 or $5,000 or however many $100 to be able to generate kind of an 8, 9, 10% return on that on a consistent basis, knowing there's inventory behind it to secure it. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, they're making that money. They know they're helping their local economies.
So how does Sportsman Logistics make money then?
So we would make money by deploying that, by essentially financing that inventory. So I took a bit of Neil and I, we took a page from our past, my manufacturing past, where if we can lend money or purchase product for a company, help them quickly sell that product and redeploy that money, if we can turn that 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year, you don't have to charge 10 or 20% on that money to make a good return. You can charge a few percent to the retailer and turn it over quickly enough that we could be making 10, 20% internally for Sportsman, and deploy that money in the winter, maybe into the ski and the hockey industry, in the summer into soccer and pickleball, other sports. That by really driving the utility of it, you can generate a good return without being kind of a burden on those retailers. Because our goal is to help them, right? Not to necessarily milk them and take.
Well, sorry to interrupt. I think with my background in real estate, the typical financing model that you see in the real estate market is kind of one of two things. It's either limited partnerships where a group of people put their money in and then participate in a real estate development, or it's mortgage syndications where people put their money in and then they lend that money to a developer and then hopefully get their money back with some interest. The challenge with that structure is the investor is getting interest income, and interest income is taxed at one of the worst tax rates there is because it's a passive form of income. So we were actually able to structure something similar to that in the sense that the money is still being deployed to the retailer or the manufacturer and ultimately coming back with profit, but we can pay the investors a dividend return instead of an interest return. And the tax benefits for most investors when they receive dividends is substantially better than when they receive interest. So we're able to sort of create a structure that's actually a little better for the investors for their return.
No, I think that's really interesting. And do you want to talk a bit more about those dividends, what the levels of dividends are? Because I think, especially with current interest rates, they are pretty appealing. And I know you have some other perks that come in there as well.
Well, we really have two things. We have a dividend rate that is tiered based on how much you invest. So it goes from 8% up to 11%, depending on the dollar amount invested. And it allows the investor to put in as little as under the equity crowdfunding through Equivesto, it allows them to put in as little as $500 and up to $10,000, and then more if they are accredited and whatnot. But we also, as part of our relationship with our retailers and our manufacturers, we negotiate discounts on products. So you can buy Adidas pickleball products cheaper than you could if you went and bought it from the retailer or from Adidas directly. So we negotiate these investor perks to increase the return to the investor, but it also allows the retailer and the manufacturer to build their community and increase their customer database. So it's sort of a win-win for everybody.
Yeah, excellent. And then, David, how can potential investors get involved? And what makes Sportsman Logistics a compelling choice for their portfolio?
A couple of questions in there, I guess. So through Equivesto, absolutely. Please, people can go to equivesto.com, or they can reach out to either Neil or I at Sportsman Logistics, and we can direct them there. What's nice is Equivesto vets everything to make sure that the investments are appropriate for the investor, that the investor knows the money's actually coming over here. So certainly we encourage people to go through Equivesto. In terms of what makes it compelling, I think two things. One is that ability to get a cash flow return, and two, the ability to do good with that money too, to actually help build those local economies. That's, I think, very big these days. It's certainly important to Neil and I, but the more important part is getting a quarterly check to go out there and spend on hockey sticks or whatever else people want to spend their money. As we grow, the ability, the intent is to build that ability for people to kind of redeem that money and pull their money out, and be able to sort of cycle it around. So that's the goal. Sorry, I'm losing my voice again. I apologize, Victoria.
No worries at all. Probably I can save your voice for a few minutes. I think now would be a great time to open the floor for any questions from our attendees today. I'm just double checking because we also have this going out live on social media as well. So just making sure we have, if there are any questions coming through there. So anybody, if you're not familiar with the live webinar system, you'll see there's a chat. It used to be on the bottom left. They've moved it to the bottom right. They've just completely confused me today. And you'll see on the bottom right, there's a place to ask your questions. So if you just want to start typing in there, and I'm just going to double check on social media because people can ask questions in there as well. And if... let's see, what do we have? And just type away and we will ask the team. Okay, there's a good question come through here. Why have you focused on sports retail outlets?
That's a good question, actually. Oh, go ahead, Neil. You can answer.
I was going to say a couple of reasons. Number one, that's where our expertise and experience in retail lies, is the sports world. It is a product that can be somewhat expensive, so the retailers need access to capital and the manufacturers need access to capital, because you're not dealing with $1 and $2 items. You're dealing with fairly expensive items, but not as expensive as, say, a car. You're dealing with an item that has a reasonable cost and a reasonable retail value.
Mm-hmm.
It's a non-perishable item, so you don't finance a whole bunch of bananas and then find out that the bananas are starting to go bad and you're running out of time. So it was a sort of a key component. And the sporting goods world generally affects a lot of people. Whether it is soccer or hockey or skiing or badminton or pickleball or ringette, there's a number of different sports, right from fairly inexpensive sports to very expensive sports that need access to the retailers, that need access to the product, and they need access to the capital. So it was an industry that we felt we could grow geographically and in the sub-industries of sporting goods without sort of leaving our expertise and our experience.
And I believe the sports retail market is also growing at quite a decent CAGR as well. So that also helps.
Absolutely, and I mean, ask any parent that's had to buy a Hyperlite or a Trigger 8 for $350 for their junior hockey player. There's got to be a better way, right? There's got to be a better way.
It always seemed to be every season you had to buy new skis for the children. Then they seem to do this growing thing, and so and new skis are not cheap. So
and there's lots of people out there trying to bring solutions to the table, and they just need help to do it. Right?
Absolutely. Let's see if there are any other questions. As I said, just hop into the chat and feel free to ask anything. Okay. So the next question I have here is about Equivesto and what is the process to invest?
Well, Equivesto is the equity crowdfunding portal. So they're licensed through the Alberta Securities Commission and through the federal regulators who control access to capital and control the ability of people to raise money. So they're licensed to run our equity crowdfunding platform. So if you're interested in investing, you go to their website. You first of all read the information and make sure that it's something that you're interested in. You then create an account and go through the Equivesto due diligence process because they need to do some verification on the individual investor and their financial abilities and whatnot, because there's rules and regulations they have to comply with. And you go with the comfort of knowing that we as Sportsman Logistics have no access to any of that. Much like if you went to your stockbroker to open up a stock account, you go through that same type of process to open up an Equivesto account. Then, assuming that everything is good and you want to invest, then you sign the forms electronically, you transfer the funds electronically, and Equivesto handles all of the closing requirements for the investor. So it's similar to opening up a stock account with a stockbroker, but slightly different, but a similar type of process. Yeah.
And I mean, it sounds, I always liken it to, or say it's not like buying a book off Amazon, but it's not like the old-fashioned way with back and forth with paperwork from a lawyer. It's sort of somewhere in between. And the process should take you probably about 10 to 12 minutes, which to invest in, in a company is still pretty rapid in the grand scheme of things.
Yep.
Excellent. And thank you for putting that link in there, David.
My pleasure.
Excellent. Well, I think if we've answered everybody's questions, I just want to say a very big thank you to everyone who attended today. Thank you to you, David and Neil, for joining us today and answering all my questions. And as you just heard, so the campaign is currently live on equivesto.com. If you go to equivesto.com and log in, you will see the campaign there. Minimum investment is $500. And then the maximum does sort of depend on, how much or wait, if you're an accredited investor or not, really. So, it goes up from there. And certainly if you have a look at the dividends and the discounts, those also are at different levels. So you can have a look at those, and full details are on there. And please go through and read everything on the website. And the button's there, press it if you wish to invest. So thank you again, David and Neil. And, please watch out for these webinars, follow on social media. If you aren't already, you can go in and sign up for the regular newsletters, and you'll get all the updates on the developments with Sportsman Logistics. And I think everyone will agree it's been a relatively short time and you've achieved an awful lot. So congratulations.
Thanks, Victoria, and thanks for hosting this. And if we do this again, hopefully my voice will be better and I'll be more coherent. So.
You've been very coherent and we've definitely been able to hear you, but go and rest it now. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.